So without any further ado, I'm gonna share my screen, and we can delve right into the references and the big ideas that I want to explore today about Hanukkah. So let's start with this background. Let's learn about the history of Hanukkah, then about the story itself of Hanukkah, the miracle of Hanukkah, and then about some of the lessons that we can draw from Hanukkah in our modern day and age. Does anyone want to begin here with this introduction? Historical background, anyone? Mindy, go for it, but you're on mute?
No, I'm not on mute. I just...
Oh, go for it. So go for it. I can see you. I thought you were raising your hand, but doesn't matter. I'm putting you on the spot. Go for it.
Okay. The story of Hanukkah takes us back to the year 164 BCE, some 150 years before the birth of Christianity, and 2 centuries before the destruction of the Second Temple, when the Syrian ruler Antiochus V ascended the throne. He was determined to impose his values on the Jewish people. He forbid the practice of Judaism, set up a statue of Zeus in the temple, and systematically desecrated Jerusalem's holy sites. Jews who were caught practicing Judaism were tortured to death. This was tried on a grand scale. Sadly, he was helped in this endeavor by 2 Jewish high priests, Jason and
Menorah. Yeah.
Who assisted him in turning, the temple into a Greek house of worship. To put it into historical perspective, had Atticus succeeded, Judaism would have died. Its daughter religions, Christianity and Islam, would have never come to be. A small group of Jews, led by the elderly priest Messianu and his sons, rose in revolt. They fought a brilliant campaign, and within 3 years, they had recaptured Jerusalem, removed sacrilegious objects from the temple, and restored Jewish autonomy.
Jewish autonomy.
It was, as we may say in the Hanukkah prayers, a victory for the weak against the strong, and the few against the many. Religious liberty was established, and the temple was rededicated.
Right. Now, just to go a little bit deeper into this, I mean, the Greeks, it's interesting because we've had many types of enemies throughout history. Some enemies wanted to kill our bodies, kill us completely, murder us. We had an enemy like that not too long ago, 80 years ago, by the name of Adolf Hitler. He did not want any Jew to exist, simply exist in their physical bodies. But we had some enemies like the Greeks that the Maccabees faced. They did not necessarily want to kill us or kill our bodies. They wanted to kill our soul. They were okay with Jews existing if they were going to relinquish their heritage and some of Judaism's greatest values, like keeping kosher, like keeping Shabbat, like circumcising our children, and so on and so forth. But if we were going to continue to adhere to those values, then they were going to kill us. So they didn't really want our bodies, but they did want our souls. Now, what's interesting is that they were very cruel about this. And we can read the history books, and I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but if Jews were caught practicing Judaism, then they were killed in the most torturous ways. For example, if a mother was caught circumcising her child, then her child would be tied to her back and they would be sliced into 2. Just think about that. It's worse than ISIS. And they were very cruel about carrying out their evil decrees. So a small group of Jews who refused not just to accept this torture, but most importantly, because many Jews did not refuse this, small group of Jews who refused to assimilate, who refused to say, okay, fine, we're going to sell our soul to the Satan, so to speak, stood up and said to the Greeks, no, we're sorry. We're not going to be apologetic about our Judaism, about what it stands for. And they fought this victory, which was considered to be first brilliant militarily, but also miraculous, because they were really just a few Jews. Most of the Jews were assimilated. They were called Hellenists, and referring to the idea that they accepted Hellenism upon themselves and rejected Judaism. So they were not only just fighting the Greeks themselves, but they were fighting also the Jews assimilated among the Greeks. So it was really just a small band of Jews, the Maccabees, their families, and those that they were able to influence. And again, miraculously, they were able to overcome the Greeks in a period of about 3 years. That's how long the Chanukah battle occurred. And finally, the battle culminated with the rededication of the temple and the lighting of the menorah, which we'll speak about. So that's really the big miracle of Hanukkah. And it's a big miracle also from a historical standpoint, as you mentioned, Mindy, right here. And that is that if really the Maccabees would have lost, then Judaism would have not existed today. If Judaism would have not existed then, that means Christianity that was born from Judaism and Islam that was born from Judaism also would have not been born. That means the world would have been a very, very, very different place today. But thanks to that small group of Jews that were determined to restore pride in Judaism, pride in their own identity, pride in what Judaism brings to the world, they, in many, many ways, saved the world's religions, saved the world's dignity, and saved maybe altogether the entire world. So that's the story of Hanukkah. Now let's just go very quickly. Let's go to the laws and customs of Hanukkah, just so that we know how to celebrate it, practically speaking, these days. And again, Hanukkah starts next week on Thursday night. Thursday night will be the first night. So I encourage you to follow these laws and customs too. And then I want to go to the meat of it and speak of some of the life lessons we can draw from Hanukkah. So some laws and customs. Let's go over this very quickly. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? I guess Mindy, otherwise you'll have to continue.
Okay. I will, Rabbi.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, see, go for it. Go, thank you.
At the heart of the festival is the nightly menorah lighting. The menorah holds 9 flames, one of which is the shamash, the attendant, which is used to kindle the other 8 lights. On the first night, we light just 1 flame. On the second night, an additional flame is lit. And by the 8th night of Hanukkah, all 8 lights are kindled.
Right. Okay. So stop right there. It's interesting because this stems from an argument in the Talmud between Hillel and Shammai, those 2 great Mishnaic sages of about 2,000 years ago, in which they really discussed how should one celebrate the 8 days of Hanukkah. Should we light 8 candles first night, 7 the second, 6 the third, and so on and so forth? Or should we do it the way it is described here? On the first night, 1 candle, second night, second candle, 2 candles, third night, 3 candles, and so on. Hillel said that we should follow the order of 1, 2, 3, 4. Shammai said we should follow the order of 8, 7, 6, 5. Now, what are they really arguing about? Just to go into this very briefly, but just because it has such a powerful lesson. What they're really arguing about is how do we light up the world? When we face darkness out there, what is our duty? How can we indeed bring light to a dark world? And they argued not about whether one should bring light or not. It's the duty of every human being to bring light to the darkness of the world. But they're arguing about the how. Shammai, who was in a way an extremist, in many ways an extremist, said, well, when we face darkness, we have to go all the way. Let's burn that darkness to the point that we give our every iota of strength and energy to fight this darkness. That's why the first night we have to light 8 candles. Let's shine as strongly as possible. Second night, we'll have less light to project because there'll be less darkness because we will have given our entire might the first night. So the second night we'll light 7, third night 6, and so on. Hillel said, no, that's not the way to deal with the world. Sometimes when you come with too much light, you burn people. You blind them. They can absorb this light. You have to meet people where they are. And sometimes what you have to do is really contract your light and give them just 1 candle the first night. Then you can slowly but surely increase to 2 candles. You have to, again, meet people where they are and then make them grow from where they are. It's interesting to note that Halacha states that we follow Hillel's opinion. Indeed, next Thursday night, we'll light 1 candle. Friday before Shabbat, we'll light 2 candles. Saturday night, after Shabbat, 3 candles, and so on and so forth. Why? Because we believe that that's really the best way of illuminating the world. That's the secret of education, so to speak. To meet people where they are, give them a small dosage of light first, the dosage that they can actually digest, and then Give them a little bit more and a little bit more. Hold their hands as they grow from strength to strength. That's Hillel's perspective. So that's why we follow Hillel, and that's why this is the way we celebrate Chanukah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 8. Now go ahead, continue, Joyce. Go for it.
First blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvot tzivanu lihatner shel Hanukkah.
Okay, good. You know what? You don't even have to read the blessings. Just I put it in here just in case you want to take it home with you, and then you don't have the blessings anywhere else. You can use these.
They're beautiful.
Okay, so let's skip the blessings. There's 3 blessings. There's actually 2 blessings that we say on the first night only. We also say the blessing of Shechianu, as it is for any new event in Judaism. Now, let's continue here. Where is the menorah placed? Go ahead.
A menorah is lit in every household, or even by each individual within the household, and placed in a doorway or window. The menorah is also lit in synagogues and other public places.
Right. Okay, very good. So it has to be placed by the window, by the doorway. The reason for that is because that's where we can actually shine our light to the public. By the window, it faces the public. At the doorway, that's where people come in and out. Maybe a little less during COVID-19, but still they can potentially come in and out of our doorway. So the goal of Chanukah, again, is to eliminate the darkness outside. Therefore, we have to be facing the outside. By the way, it's interesting to note, it doesn't apply yet to us in Arizona, but it does apply to people in Chicago, in New York, and in many other places, Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in many other places in the world in which you have high-rise buildings, because it's interesting to note. It's a very interesting halacha. And that is that what happens if you live on the 117th floor of a high-rise building? No one can see your light, so it defeats the purpose. If the purpose of Hanukkah is to bring your light to the outside and illuminate the world, you're not illuminating the world, you're illuminating the sky if you live on the 117th floor. So the halacha teaches you that if you do live on the 117th floor, you should try and get a special permit from the HOA or whatever the building's board of leadership is called, in order to be able to light your menorah in the lobby of the building. So that again, you'll be able to fulfill this idea of Hanukkah to light up the darkness of the world. You have to come down from your 117th floor. By the way, in a deeper sense, also teaches us that if you think that you spiritually, emotionally, you live on the 117th floor, that you, of course, are the wisest person in the world, and you were gifted with all of the skills and talents that a human being can possibly be gifted with, and that you live up there and everyone else is down there, Chanukah comes and tells you, well, that doesn't matter how you feel. You can be as great as you think you are. You still have to come down to the lobby and illuminate the world. Your task is still to go down to the level of people, the level of the common man, and illuminate them too. Okay, let's continue.
Okay. We recite this special Hallel prayer daily and add the prayer of Va'a Na Nisim in our daily prayers and in the grace after meals, to offer praise and thanksgiving to God for delivering the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the wicked into the hands of the righteous.
Right, I would encourage everyone really to study this prayer, Vala Nisim. It's a short one, but that it is recited during every Amidah prayer and grace after the meal during Hanukkah. But again, it speaks of how thankful we are to God for this miracle of the Maccabees overcoming the Greeks. You know, it's interesting because Hanukkah always falls during the period of Thanksgiving, and yet we have the opportunity to really give thanks. Immediately after Thanksgiving, then pronounce your thank you to God also for the festival of Hanukkah. Okay, let's continue. The third bullet point here.
Since the Hanukkah miracle involved oil, it is customary to eat foods fried in oil. The Eastern European classic is the potato latke, pancake, garnished with applesauce or sour cream. And in the reigning Israel, favorite is the jelly-filled safganaya, the donut.
Right, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
It's called sufganiyot. Sufganiyot.
Yeah,
Sufganyon.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
On Hanukkah, it is customary to play with Dreidel, a four-sided spinning top, with the Hebrew letters Nun, Gimel, He, and Shin, an acronym for Nes, Gadol, Haya, and Sham. A great miracle happened here. The game is usually played for a pot of coins, nuts, or other stuff, which is won or lost based on which letter the dreidel lands when it is spun.
Right, and we'll expound on this custom. So remember it, because that's where I've drawn one of the life lessons from. So remember the custom of playing the dreidel. Okay, continue.
In today's consumer-driven society, people tend to place great importance on giving Hanukkah gifts. However, the tradition is actually to give Hanukkah gelt, gifts of money, to children. In addition to rewarding positive behavior and devotion to Torah study, the cash gifts give the children the opportunity to give tzedakah. This has also spawned the phenomena of foil covered chocolate gelt.
Right. So it's interesting to note the fact that we give gifts on Hanukkah, not money. I personally believe that it's the influence of Christmas, but it's certainly not a Jewish custom. The custom on Hanukkah is to give money. Now, part of the reason is because whenever we receive money as a gift, we have to give 10% of it to charity, at least 10% of it to charity. And by giving money to our children, we'll be teaching them that special of giving 10% to charity. So if I give my child a $10 bill, he knows immediately that he has to give $1 to tzedakah, and he gives it right there and then. So I fulfilled really two mitzvahs. One mitzvah is making him happy on Hanukkah and celebrating this festival. But the second mitzvah is teaching him the value of tzedakah. I don't understand why it has to belong to the Mormons only. The Mormons are very good at giving 10%. So, but it's a Jewish custom. So on Hanukkah, we have the opportunity really to teach that custom or that mitzvah to our children by giving cash and not gifts, which might just be, I may be wrong, might just be a Christian influence. Okay. So those are some of the laws and customs of Hanukkah. Now let's go back to the story itself, to the
Rabbi,
life.
I have a question.
Yes.
So who lights the menorah?
So who lights the menorah? Well, it's a good question. So preferably every person in a household should light the menorah. Now, some say that only the father should light, or the one of the adults should light, but really preferably, like in my household, every child lights, every single child lights. Why? Because the more the light, the better. More the light, the better. Why not? Especially such mitzvah lights, right? These are not just spa lights with some vanilla flavor. These are mitzvah lights. So the more mitzvah lights, the more we can illuminate the darkness of the world. All right. Let's go now, right, again, to the life lessons. After learning about these laws and customs, let's go to life lessons. I want to speak about lesson number one, which is the lesson of resilience. Now, let's ask the question of why is it that we celebrate Hanukkah? We spoke of the military victory, but the Talmud has a different answer. The Talmud doesn't focus too much on the military victory, but it focuses rather on another victory. Does anyone want to read this passage from the Talmud here? What is Hanukkah? Anyone?
I will, again.
Let's go, boys.
Okay.
Timothy, or else. Okay, go for it.
Babylonian Talmud, Traktat Shabbat 23b. What is Hanukkah? When the royal Hasmonean family overpowered and was victorious over the Greeks, they searched and found only a single cruse of pure oil, enough to light the menorah for a single day. A miracle occurred, and they lit the menorah with this oil for 8 days. On the following year, they established these 8 days as days of festivity and praise and thanksgiving to God.
Right. It's interesting again that the Talmud focuses on this specific miracle, on the miracle that this small cruse of olive oil was supposed to last for just 1 day, as we all know, and it lasted 8 days. So how about the military victory? There's no word of that in the Talmud. And I think the answer is, and we won't focus on that again too much, but the reason they do that, they focus not so much on the military victory, but rather on the victory of the menorah in the temple, is because number one, the Maccabees' victory didn't last too long. Lasted about 150 years. Then the Romans came about and exiled us from our land. They destroyed our temple, exiled us from our land. And that is maybe also because the military victory might be a beautiful and a miraculous one. But at the end of the day, it's the victory of the physical body, of our physical might. And yet the Talmudic sages wanted to focus rather on the spiritual might of every human being. That is symbolized by the menorah, by the lights that we light each and every day to illuminate the darkness of the world. And therefore, they thought, and they were right about this, that this miracle is a miracle that's eternal. It won't die when another power comes into being. It won't die when the Romans will come and exile us from Israel and destroy our temple. But that light that we light from within will continue to light day in and day out to eternity. And that's why they focused really on this miracle, so that we too can open up our eyes to our spiritual might, not just our physical one, which is limited and even at one point can die. So that's the reason they focused on this. But let me ask you a question. And it's an interesting question that is asked by many commentaries. And that is, if the miracle really was the fact that they lit one tiny cruse of olive oil, and it was supposed to last for 1 day, but it lasted for 8 days, then think about this. The miracle was really only a 7-day miracle, because the first day was supposed to exist, right? That first day in which that light was supposed to light, it lit. It lit during that first day. So the miracle itself was a 7-day miracle. So why not celebrate Hanukkah for 7 days? The miracle was, again, a miracle of 7 days. Now remember, you can't count the first day. We said the first day was supposed to happen. So why count the first day as part of our festival of Hanukkah? Why not just celebrate Hanukkah for 7 days? I know we want to prolong Hanukkah, prolong the gifts, prolong the donut tasting and the latkes eating, but still, there has to be a reason for it. Does anyone have an idea?
I have an idea,
Please.
Rabbi.
Yes.
And that is because that was the only cruse of oil that was not contaminated. So that was a miracle that one was left.
Okay, fine. All right. So we might be celebrating like that. We might be celebrating the fact that they actually found the only cruse of olive oil that was pure among all the cruses of olive oil that were impure. Okay. So I want to connect what you just said to the depth of this idea. And that is that, yes, indeed, the first day maybe should not be counted because the light of the first day was expected. Nonetheless, the mere fact that when the Maccabees came into a temple that was completely desecrated and where idol worship was in every corner, where prostitutes and pigs were found everywhere, even in the Holy of Holies. When they came into such a temple, they could have very well said, you know what, we give up. Or let's launch a committee to investigate exactly what happened. Let's wait another 5 months and see how this can be cleaned. No one can just come and think that they can clean this mess up. The fact that they did not say that, the fact that with resilience, conviction, and determination, they said, it doesn't matter what we are seeing in front of us. We know that this temple in essence is holy and will restore its holiness with our every iota of strength. That in and of itself was a miracle. That in and of itself, the fact that they again did not give up, that they were willing to dedicate themselves to God and to restoring the holiness of his temple, that in and of itself was a miracle. And that's why we also celebrate that first day of Hanukkah. Yes, there were 7 days of miracle in which the light lasted miraculously, but that first day comes to celebrate the resilience of the Maccabees. And I think that this is probably one of the most important life lessons one can take from Hanukkah, and one can take for life altogether. And that is, I know that sometimes life is challenging, and sometimes much is thrown at our direction, that we simply cannot face, cannot even digest. And there is trouble and pain and ache all around us. And then I have to tell you, we're still in this pandemic. 8 months later, we still are not sure how it's going to end. Thank God there's a vaccine in the horizon, but still, we live in quarantine, many of us. Our lives have taken such a toll, and we ask ourselves, what will be? But here we can learn from the Maccabees and from this first day of Hanukkah to never ever give up, to understand that yes, I might face chaos, I might face complete mess, not just physical mess like there was in the temple, but also spiritual, emotional mess. Yet as long as I'm able to dedicate myself to my purpose in life, to dedicate myself to lighting a light for someone else, to doing good in this world, then the mess will take care of itself, then holiness and light will prevail. This is exactly what the Maccabees teach us. And I believe that this is very much connected to the way we start the year. So the beginning of the year, of course, as we all know, is Rosh Hashanah. The high holiday season culminates with Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was the holiest day of the year, and it was the day also in which something else happened in the temple. And that is that the high priest would walk into the Holy of Holies. Again, the Holy of Holies that was desecrated by the Greeks. They did horrific things in it. But he walked into the Holy of Holies and he would pray on behalf of the Jewish people. One of the prayers that he prayed on behalf of the Jewish people, this is the prayer right here, but in the bold letters right here is that may be a year that no woman suffers miscarriage. So it's a good prayer. It's a nice prayer. It's an important prayer. Yes, indeed, we pray that no pregnant woman suffers miscarriage. But the question is asked, if he's praying for the entire nation, then pray for the entire nation. Why are you praying just for a segment of the nation? Pregnant woman. Leave that for a different prayer at a different time. Now is the time for you to pray for the entire nation. What does it mean? That no woman suffers miscarriage? It's an important prayer, but it doesn't represent the entire nation. And the answer is, according to Rabbi Steinsaltz, it's just a brilliant thought. And that is that, yes, he was praying for the entire nation. He wasn't just praying for pregnant women. He was praying for each and every human being. Because each and every human being at some point in their lives, it's usually when we are children, we too are pregnant. Not physically pregnant, but pregnant with dreams, with goals, with aspiration. When we are children, we say ourselves, I want to change the world. I'm going to be a fireman that's going to save everyone from fires. And then we grow up a little bit, I'm going to be the biggest billionaire. And I'll donate everything to charity. And I'm going to change the world. But then we grow older and we face hurdle after hurdle, challenge after challenge. And we all of a sudden have to get into the nitty-gritty details of life and start paying bills and getting, accumulating many different types of responsibilities. And we said to ourselves, oh yes, those dreams that we had, oh, we were crazy, forget about it. We'll miscarry them. And yet the high priest is praying for us on Yom Kippur in order for us never to give up those dreams, to continue to have the Maccabee resilience towards fulfilling those aspirations. Don't miscarry, the high priest is telling us on Yom Kippur. Not just the pregnant woman should not miscarry, but us that are pregnant with dreams. Don't miscarry those dreams, because that is what life is all about. In a way, again, this is the idea of Hanukkah. Hanukkah comes to celebrate not just some military victory, but again, that tremendous spirit of resilience, of perseverance that the Maccabees embodied. And by embodying it, they showed Jews really how to be Jewish. They showed human beings how to live. They showed human beings how to live. Now, it's reminiscent of Rabbi Akiva, and I'll just end with this example. Rabbi Akiva was a legendary Talmudic sage who also lived in times of peril. He, in fact, experienced in front of his eyes the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 CE, about 200 years after the miracle of Chanukah. He was a man who suffered personally, greatly. He was impoverished. He was a simple shepherd. When he married the daughter of one of the wealthiest Jews in Israel, that wealthy Jew disowned him because he didn't approve of the marriage of his daughter. And he said to him, well, he said to his daughter, the guy's ignorant. He's this ignorant shepherd. Leave him alone. Why are you marrying him? So he disowned him. And nonetheless, with persistence and resilience, Rabbi Akiva made a name for himself and almost single-handedly also saved the Jewish nation during the times of the Romans, in which they filled our land with desecration and terrible decrees. but for that, by the way, he was tortured to death on Yom Kippur. Speaking of Yom Kippur, it was on Yom Kippur in Caesarea. His skin was shaved from his toes to his forehead. And as he was being tortured, he was saying the Shema and smiling. And the students couldn't understand. How come you smiling? They torturing you. And he said, no, my entire life, I sought to fulfill the words of the Shema that says that one should love God bechol nafshecha, with all your soul. Now finally I have the opportunity to really serve God and be killed because of my godly walk in this world. So I'm serving God finally with all my soul. They're killing me, so it's with all my soul. So I will not be happy, I will not smile. But this was the man who also again embodied this Maccabee spirit, who understood that he had dreams that he had to accomplish, and no wall was too tall, no challenge was too big. He achieved them, and by doing so, he saved the Jewish nation. Now, again, I want to personalize this because I know that we are facing a pandemic and the hardships of life are mounting up. And each one, of course, has different ways of looking at this pandemic and different ways of dealing with their hardships. But I think at the heart of it all, we must also embody that Maccabee spirit, or we must understand that, yes, challenges might be mounting, but as long as we can dedicate ourselves each and every day, and we don't have to think of big projects to do so, just by being nice to each other, by repairing broken relationships, by picking up the phone to cheer someone up, by sending in a little bit of charity for those who need it most these days, by doing so many good deeds, by visiting the sick. I know sometimes we can't visit them face to face, but we can visit them by picking up the phone and calling them, by sending a nice text, or maybe even by coming close to them and keeping that 6 foot distance, whatever it may be. But as long as we can stick with perseverance to actualizing our God-given purpose each and every day, then nothing will stand in our way, not even the Greeks and not even this pandemic. So that's the big idea of Chanukah, this idea of resilience. Second life lesson, and of course I want to open this up before we go to the second life lesson that we learned from the Dreidel, but the second life lesson is a little bit different. Does anyone though want to say anything? Comments, disagreements, anything?
I would like to say just about what you just spoke about. It feels to me that cruise of oil, I keep going back to that cruise of oil was God. Right. It was a gift from God, and he was, and I kept feeling like maybe like that's today, like you're saying, but I kept going back to that cruise of oil and the one light, the one light, why light the rest? Because it was God, and the holiday is the 8 days, but it was not to underestimate that God is everywhere, and he gives us signs that he's there, even in all the rubble.
Right.
And that's where I kept coming back to. And right. Every time I kept seeing it, I kept seeing more light. Right. From that one cruise. Right.
So I'll point out what the Kabbalists teach. It's interesting to note because, of course, the Hebrew language is so rich with messages and with meaning because it's a divine language. Now, the word for oil in Hebrew is shemen. Shemen, as the Kabbalists point out, is really a combination of two words. There's min, mem nun, and shin. Shin is one of the famous letters of God. That's the letter we have on our mezuzah, on our tefillin. Shin is one of those letters of God. Now, shemen, the word for oil, can also be, the letters can be mixed around, and we can spell out the words min, shin, which means from Shin, or from God, like you just said, Joyce. So in a way, you're right, that miracle of the oil was a sign of God, was maybe the revelation or the demonstration that here God dwells, and I'm here with you, fighting this battle with you and for you. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Rabbi, I was listening to Rabbi Sachs, may he rest in peace, and he was saying that one way to survive is to dream of the future. And he quoted, what was his name? Franklin, Search of Man.
Oh, Frankl, yeah, Viktor Frankl.
Frankl, and Victor.
One search for meaning.
And
Yeah.
then what he said, that the way he survived, and some of people that he knew, they were dreaming of like seeing their families again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to learn from Holocaust survivors, including Viktor Frankl, who then wrote one of the bestsellers of all time, Man's Search for
Right.
Meaning, in which he proved what he himself experienced. He saw it in others, but he saw it in himself too. That exactly what we're speaking about. And that is that even though we might face the greatest evil of history and the deepest pain of history, which they did in Auschwitz, and that's where Viktor Frankl was, I believe, nonetheless, with that search for meaning and those dreams that we are impregnated with by God and by our soul, we can overcome anything. And this is exactly what the Maccabees taught. They too faced a little Holocaust. I don't know if as big as, but the Greeks were also vicious, and they persevered. And with that resilience, they were able to overcome it all. Now, there's a great saying by a Hasidic Jew by the name of Rabbi Mendel Futerfas, who too I had the privilege of meeting him. But Mendel Futerfas was a man who suffered terribly by the communists in Russia. Just for practicing Judaism, he was imprisoned in the Gulag for 20 years. Now, the Gulag is no American jail. As you can imagine, the Gulag is one of the most, it's like Devil's Island in the times of Alfred Dreyfus, if you're familiar with that history, but it's one of the worst and most torturous places in the world. Not only that, Rabbi Mendel Futerfas, this great Hasidic Jew, he just beamed with holiness. I remember meeting him multiple times, but he was always called to the Torah by the name of Menachem Mendel, Ben Menachem Mendel, the son of Menachem Mendel. He was named after his father. How could that be? That's because his father died when his mother still was pregnant with him. He really never had a father. This man then grew up in Russia, where conditions were terrible, and all 6 of his children died. Just imagine the type of life this guy had. He was then thrown into the Gulag for 20 years. 20 years. And miraculously was able then to finally reunite with his wife in Great Britain, and then move to Israel, where again I had the privilege of meeting him. He would really tell many stories about this idea of resilience. That one of his main quotes was that if you've lost money, you really haven't lost anything. Money comes, money goes. If you've lost your health, you've lost something, because you're not the same person as you were before. But if you've lost your resilience, then you've lost it all. And that's as fitting as it could be to this message of Hanukkah. All right, let's go to the Dreidel. There's a lesson also to be learned from the Dreidel itself, which I think is very apropos to these times, especially to this pandemic. Does anyone want to read? Why do we spin the Dreidel on Hanukkah? Does anyone want to read? Why the Dreidel? Anyone? Janet, go for it.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm a little low because I'm working with my son. Okay, great. The Dreidel, known in Hebrew as a Sevivon, dates back to the time of the Greek-Syrian rule over the Holy Land, which is set off the Maccabean revolt that culminated in the Hanukkah miracle. Learning Torah was outlawed by the enemy, a crime punishable by death. The Jewish children resorted to hiding in caves in order to study. If a Greek patrol would approach, the children would pull out their tops and pretend to be playing a game.
Right. That game was the game of Dreidel, and then they would have fought studying Torah. Now, which is reminiscent of what they would do during the times of the Romans. That's why on Lag BaOmer, where we celebrate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, hiding in the cave also to study Torah, so that the Romans would not kill him. Then they would play the game of the bow and arrow. So on Hanukkah, during the times of the Greeks, year 164 BC, they played the game of the Dreidel, and therefore we play this game. Now, I have a question though. It's always bothered me, because Judaism is against gambling. We don't gamble. I know sometimes you see religious Jews in casinos. It's not supposed to be that way. We don't gamble because we believe that we have to work for our livelihood, and we can't just give it over to some gambling.
Casino.
We can lose our responsibility, lose our ownership of life to some unknown. Now, Dreidel, the game of the Dreidel, in essence, is a gambling game. So why do we teach children to gamble on Hanukkah? All of a sudden, yeah, we go against Jewish law. But the idea is profound, and I found this idea by Rabbi Shneur Zalman V'Liadi, the author of the Tanya. It was the first Hasidic Rebbe of the Chabad lineage, a brilliant man. And he explains the game of the dreidel as follows. I think this idea is just so brilliant, and again, so apropos to our modern day and age. Janet, continue, one more.
There are many goals and opportunities in life if we can and must access by preparing for them, by wanting them, working for them, fighting for them, and laboring to achieve them. But then there are opportunities that you can never access through your consciousness, by your aspirations and dreams. In fact, the only way you can prepare for them is by losing your consciousness. Only because your ego and limited scope of life did not interfere did you create the space that allowed these transcendent opportunities to enter your life.
Right. So speaking of quotes, okay. This reminds me of another quote that I may have shared in the past, but the quote that says that there are two types of people that fail. Those that do not have plans. You need plans in life. If you want to become a doctor, you need to have a plan for that. If you want to make a living, you have to have a plan for that, whatever it is. So those that do not have plans. Another type of people who fail are those who are obsessed with their plans. Then I'm so obsessed with my plan that when it doesn't work out, I fall into this deep hole of frustration and even maybe depression. Because gosh, I failed. My plan did not work out. What does this mean? What this means is that we have to really be open to the greater plan that is out there for us. It's not just about our plans. Yes, we have to have plans. But God also has a plan for us each and every day. I might have a meeting at 10:30 and something else happened. So am I to be frustrated because of that? Maybe it's God's way of telling me, oh, 1 second. No, I don't want you to go to the meeting. I actually want you to do something else. Focus on what you really had to do yesterday and finish that, whatever it may be. Or maybe there's someone you need to call. You have to reach out of yourself instead of being so stuck with your own plan. And this is what Rabbi Shneur Zalman V'Liadi is saying, that sometimes in life we prepare for our day, for our night. We have a schedule, and sometimes that schedule doesn't work. And then we have to lose our consciousness, as he puts it right here so beautifully. We have to let go of our ego and say, well, then if this is not working out, so what does God want from us? It's not just about what I want from life. It's about what life wants from me, as Viktor Frankl put it. What is it that life wants from me? And once I'm able to lose my ego, lose my consciousness, then I can listen to the beauty of life. You know, I once asked a pianist in our community, the concert pianist, what is the moment in which she feels during a performance that she has hit that climax, that she is doing so well that the music is flowing through her? And she told me, I'll never forget, she said, it's when I am not present. I said to her, what do you mean? You're present, you're playing. No, it's when I don't feel myself anymore. The music has overcome me. I'm just a channel for it. I think you see that with artists too, that they are so immersed in their art that their ego sheds and it goes away, it dissipates. It's only about the art. It's overtaken them completely. See that with people who write, not just poets that write poems, but people who write essays and articles. Sometimes it just flows, that it's not about you anymore, something much greater than you. You reach this level of complete transcendence. And that's what it means, you're losing your consciousness. Now, why is this so important in our day and age? Because yes, this pandemic has crippled 7 billion people on our planet. I don't know one person that hasn't been crippled somehow, somewhere by this pandemic, whether it's their job, whether, God forbid, it's their health, or whether it's just their rhythm of life. But the question is, fine, so now that you've been crippled unexpectedly, what do you do? Open yourself up to God's blessings, to God's message for you. God certainly wants to say something. And all you have to do is lose your consciousness, lose your ego, and ask yourself, what's the message here? What can I do to become your instrument of goodness in this world? This is why we play the Dreidel on Hanukkah, because the best way to celebrate the military victory and the spiritual victory of the Maccabees of goodness over bad, of light over darkness, is by saying to ourselves, let's connect to this deepest light in here. That deepest light is God. What God wants from me, not just what my mind wants from me, what my body wants from me, but what does God want from me? And by connecting to that light, through that dreidel, through the symbol of the dreidel at least, then we'll also be able to live life so much more meaningfully, purposefully, and I think also joyfully. I want to just share a quick story. I may have not shared the story in the past, but it's a story about Oren and Tebby in Toronto, who had hosted the yeshiva boys in his neighborhood for kumsitz, for a bonfire and song and some barbecue on a Thursday night. And they were playing their guitars and singing well into the night. And then, and everyone was happy except for his wife. His wife was telling Oren, look, the neighbors are going to be so upset at us. They'll hate us and they'll never allow us to have any parties anymore. The next morning, the phone rings in the house. The wife of Oren says, I know who this is. This is the neighbor. She's calling to complain. She picks up the phone and lo and behold, it was the neighbor. And before the neighbor can even speak, she says to them, I'm so sorry. I know you're calling to complain about the boys that we had over last night. I promise you, we won't do this again. We won't make this noise anymore. And the neighbor says to her, I'm not calling to complain, quite the opposite. I'm calling to thank you. To thank me for what? I'm calling to thank you because yesterday was my mother's yahrzeit. And I went to sleep in a very somber mood. I went to my window, opened it up to catch a breath of fresh air, and what do I hear? These lovely melodies coming from your backyard. And some of these songs were sung by my own mother, whose yahrzeit it was, when I was a child. So I'm calling to thank you for bringing such comfort to such a somber day. And here is the wife of Oren, who said, you see, I thought it was, okay, gosh, I had my narrow-minded perspective on the day, on that event. And God came and showed me it's not about me and what I think sometimes. Life is so much greater. There's a much bigger picture to everything we see and everything we experience. This is the idea of the dreidel. Number 3, let's conclude here with this lesson now from your favorite foods. Latkes, donuts, all the good healthy foods that we eat on Hanukkah. Okay, does anyone want to read here?
I'll read. Sue.
Sue, go for it, yes.
Oil played a significant role in the Hanukkah story. The small jug of oil that miraculously provided fuel for the temple menorah for 8 days. It is a Jewish tradition to eat foods that reflect the significance of a holiday, such as matzah on Passover and apple dipped in honey on Rosh Hashanah. And Hanukkah is no exception. For at least the last 1,000 years, Jews have traditionally eaten oily foods on Hanukkah.
Right. Now I want to go to the very essence of oil. Oil, fine, we understand that we are celebrating the miracle of the cruise of the oil that lasted for 8 days instead of just 1 day, as we mentioned. But it's interesting to note, as the Kabbalists do, and that is that we are celebrating oil also because of what oil is. Oil is a liquid that does not mingle with other liquids. We all know that when we mix oil with water, for example, it floats on the top. It doesn't mingle with other liquids. Now, why is that? The Kabbalists again teach us that beyond this name, Shemen, that we said means comes from God, we also learn from this idea that the oil represents, and that is that we too don't have to mingle and assimilate and lose our identity with the liquids of the world, with the liquids that we may face, with the waters that we may bathe in. We have to remain true to who we are as the oil remains true to who it is when it's mixed with other liquids. Now, what does it mean to remain true to who you are? I've asked my teenagers this question because, you know, the big thing these days, you have to be true to yourself, true to yourself. What does that mean? And I almost can't stand that sentence anymore because I've heard it like so many times, like so many words that are overly repeated that they lose their meaning altogether. What does it mean to be true to yourself? So I asked my my kids, and I asked my students too, but I asked my own teenagers, what does it mean to be true to yourself? And I give them an example. Say you're sitting in a restaurant. Now you're on this very big diet. You can't have any cakes. You can't have any gluten, you can't, whatever. And now all of a sudden, the waiter gives you a menu, and in that menu, you see a delicious chocolate cake. And you want it with every fiber of your being. If you're true to yourself, what do? Got to be true to yourself. Well, follow your heart. Go ahead and eat that cake. So what does it mean to be true to yourself? What it means to be true to yourself, and that's the point I was trying to make, is that it doesn't mean that you have to be true to every stupid emotion that you have. You want cake, so to be true to yourself doesn't mean that you have to have that cake. Because being true to yourself means that you have to be true to your values, true to your identity, true to your principles. If your principle right now is to lose weight, don't have that cake. That's being true to yourself. It's not every stupid sensation you have in your body. Now, why am I saying this? Because the oil is true to itself. It doesn't mingle. As we have to do each and every day, but particularly on Chanukah, that's the lesson we have to take from it. We have to be true to ourselves. It means we have to be true to our values. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who passed away just a few weeks ago, would say time and time again that the world respects Jews who respect themselves, yet the world will disrespect Jews who disrespect themselves. And it's true. If you disrespect yourself, people will disrespect you. If you respect yourself, people might not like you, but they'll respect you. We've mentioned this, I know, many times. But this is the idea of the oil. We say to ourselves, we're going to be like oil. This Chanukah, yes, we're going to eat this sufganiya, we're going to eat this latke, we're going to eat this oily food, and we're going to remind ourselves that we too will be oils this year. We'll be true to our values, and we won't let anything in life compromise them or in a way squash them or even extinguish them. Now, this is to go a little bit deeper into this. This is really the idea of what we spoke about relating to oil before. Oil, we said shemen in Hebrew is a combination of two Hebrew words, min, shin, which means it comes from God. What does it mean to be an oil? What does it mean to be true to yourself and to your values? It means that at every moment of the day, you say to yourself, I come from God. I have, therefore, a godly purpose in this moment, at this place, with this person. What is it that I need to do as that godly ambassador? Because again, I'm an oil. I'm min shin. I come from God. When we train to see ourselves that way, as ambassadors of the divine, in every place, at every moment, with every person, I promise you our behavior, our comportment, our lives altogether will change. Because then we'll be able to infuse meaning and truth in every area of our lives. You know, and this is what the biblical character we're about to learn about it in the next few portions of the Torah. But my favorite biblical character is Joseph, by far. And the reason it's Joseph, it's simply because of this idea. Joseph also had a torturous life. His brothers hated him. They sold him into slavery, not before throwing him into a pit filled with snakes and scorpions. Then he found himself finally having some success, although he was completely alienated from the rest of the world and isolated in Egypt with no contact with his family or any friends. Find himself having some success as a slave in some Egyptian's house. And there he was accused of rape, erroneously, of course. And he was thrown into jail for an undefined amount of time. Imagine the life the guy had. And he was as lonely as could be throughout this entire ordeal. Yet everywhere he was, he recognized that he was from God. To the point that even when he was in jail, he was seeking to lift the spirits of everyone around him. People who looked sad, which is not an uncommon phenomenon in any jail in the world, he would go up to them and say, as the Torah tells us, why your face is so bad looking today, so sour looking today? Because he knew that he was an ambassador of the divine everywhere he went. And I think that's the third and more powerful message of Chanukah. Yes, we have to have this Maccabi style of resilience, as we spoke about. And yes, what we learn about the Dreidel is that sometimes when things don't go our way, we have to give it over to the higher power, as they say in the AA program or in the 12-step program. Give it over to the higher power. Relinquish it to God. Let God invite, let God in. Let him take control, because he's the one who also has a plan for you. But also, most importantly, we have to understand that no matter where we are ambassadors of the divine. No less and no more, because there is no such thing as more than an ambassador of the divine. That's the ultimate level. I will say this, that I'll conclude with this because I know the time is up. But I remember growing up till the age of 8 in France, we would learn about the kings of France. One of the kings of France, I think it was Louis IX, if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong, but Louis IX faced a coup d'etat in which the army tried to overturn his power, and they kidnapped his son and exiled him to a faraway place. Now, the goal of the kidnappers was to ensure that the son of Louis IX would forget that he's a prince, and he would start to behave as a common human being. And then he would not want to have any desire to go back to the palace. And then they would have been able to overturn them, not just physically, but also emotionally and psychologically and spiritually. So what did they do to the son of Louis IX? They presented him with all sorts of temptations, from a beautiful woman to the gluttonous foods to all sorts of things. Yet for 6 months, although he faced these temptations each and every day with tremendous force, he refused to fall into any of their traps. And after 6 months, they asked him, but Louis IX's son here, what are you doing? Why? I mean, these are the best temptations that anyone and everyone in the world would want. Why are you not being seduced? And he replied, that's because I will never forget that I am the son of the king, that I'm a prince, and I ought to act like one every day. I think that when we know that we are princes and princesses, and we are, as ambassadors of God, and as his children, we are princes and princesses, then we act like Joseph. Then nothing in the world can trap us. Nothing in the world can seduce us. And then not only do we maintain that royal figure, but also we bring royalty and divinity and meaning to everyone and to every place around us. And then no doubt the light of Hanukkah will light up the world through us, through our comportment and through our actions.